Hey guys, here's my third video lecture. Um, I wanted to start with a few announcements about what is coming up. So this past week you read part 4, chapters 4 and 5. This week you are going to be reading just one chapter, part 5, chapter 4. Um, I really enjoyed grading your hero anti-hero worksheets. I love Raskolnikov as a character, but it was funny to me to see how much you guys don't like him. Um, my sister actually just finished reading Crime and Punishment recently, and we were talking about it. And she was like, "Why do you like Raskolnikov so much?" I just think he's funny and interesting. So today, you guys have April 27th. You guys have the character study due for Raskolnikov and Sonia. That was for part 4, chapters 4 and 5. That's due by midnight tonight. This coming week, you guys are going to read part 5, chapter 4, and then you're going to answer some questions that are posted on Plus Portals. I wanted to look a little bit further ahead as well, just so you know exactly what's going to be due. This is all in the reading plan as well. I just wanted to reiterate it. So on May 4th, you have those reading questions due. And then May 11th, you have some final discussion questions, which again are posted on Plus Portals. And then on the 18th, you just have some really quick concluding thoughts. That's, if you had me first semester, we did this before with Brideshead and the Aeneid. It's just really your thoughts on reading this book. I like getting your feedback and seeing how you guys are experiencing the reading and what you got out of it, things like that. And then your final project is due May 21st. So you have a little less than a month, but I wanted to start talking about it now. So I'm kind of combining this final project to just be the last thing that we will do. And this is also all posted on Plus Portals, and I'll probably post another video like giving more explanation. I just wanted it to be on your radar. For this final project, you have an option. You can write a 3-page paper, you can upload a video of yourself talking about the book, or you can do a PowerPoint. If you have any questions about that, let me know. But again, that assignment page in the rubric is also posted on Plus Portals. So let's look at what you guys read and what you'll be reading this week. So you guys read that scene with Raskolnikov and Sonia where they're reading about the raising of Lazarus. And this section will be really important for your final project because this whole book is about death and resurrection, being morally or spiritually dead and then coming to hopefully moral or spiritual resurrection. And this is really poignant with the raising of Lazarus, which is obviously a very literal death and resurrection. And so the question that you are presented with from Dostoevsky is how does Lazarus come to resurrection? And then in a similar way, how might Raskolnikov come to resurrection? And how might Sonia come to resurrection? Because she too understands that she's not living in a morally good state. She, like, while we all have sympathy for her, she's a very lovable character in a lot of ways. She is still doing something that is evil. She is still doing an evil action. And you can talk about culpability, right? Those conditions for a mortal sin, you have to be totally free. And you can talk about whether or not she was totally free. But the fact of the matter is, it is an evil action to be a prostitute, right? So this next part that you're going to be reading, well, that was chapter 4, and then chapter 5, you had that whole conversation with Porphyry, which I just love. I just love Porphyry as a character. He's so interesting to me. And you see Raskolnikov again not starting to lose it, like continuing to lose it. He's still in delirium. In this next part that you're going to be reading, part 5, chapter 4, Sonia and Raskolnikov have another conversation. So at the end of part 4, chapter 4, Raskolnikov says, "I know who killed Lizaveta, and I will come back to you tomorrow and I will tell you. Or I might not come back at all." In this next part, he does come back, and this is the conversation that he has. So a few things should be coming up in your mind, like, why does he feel like he needs to tell Sonia? And that's something I want you to ponder as you're reading this. And Raskolnikov addresses it, but whenever Raskolnikov addresses anything, there's always more than one reason. One of the questions that I got last week was, why does Raskolnikov keep changing the reason that he does the murder? And this chapter, part 5, chapter 4, gives you like at least 3 different reasons that Raskolnikov says he did the murder. So I'm going to read just a couple parts that I think are very important that I want you to be looking out for when you go to read this yourself. In my edition, it's on page 398. Raskolnikov says, I wanted to find out then and there whether I was a louse like everybody else or a man, whether I can overstep barriers or not, whether I dare bend down to pick up or not, whether I am a trembling creature or whether I have the right to kill. Have the right to kill? Sonia clasped her hands. Ah, Sonia, he cried irritably, and seemed about to make some retort, but was contemptuously silent. Don't interrupt me, Sonia. I want to prove one thing only, that the devil led me on then, and he has shown me since that I did not have the right to take that path, because I am a louse, just like all the rest. He was mocking me, and look, I've come to you now. Welcome your guest. If I weren't a louse, would I have come to you? Listen, when I went to that old woman's house, I went to try. You may be sure of that. And you murdered her? But how did I murder her? Is that how men do murders? Do men go to commit a murder as I went then? I'll tell you someday how I went. Did I murder the old woman? I murdered myself, not her. I crushed myself once and for all, forever. But it was the devil that killed that old woman, not I. Enough, enough, Sonia, enough. Let me be. He cried in a sudden spasm of agony. Let me be. So this is one of the first points where Raskolnikov really verbally recognizes that he did something wrong. Before he's pretty contemptuous, but in this really vulnerable scene with Sonia, he's understanding and articulating out loud that what he did was wrong and that he did something, he damaged himself beyond repair in some way. And this is what I want you to be thinking about. He says that he asks Sonia, did I murder the old woman? I murdered myself, not her. And I want you to be thinking, how did he murder himself? Especially in light of death and resurrection and this idea of being morally dead and coming to moral resurrection. And what's the significance of that? And do you think that Raskolnikov can come to a moral resurrection after this? So you have a few reading questions that you guys are going to be answering this week. So I'm just going to read them out loud. They're posted on Plus Portals as well, but I just thought giving them verbally would be helpful too. So number 1, why does Raskolnikov go to see Sonia? Why do you think he wants to tell her this? Number 2, do you think Raskolnikov is trying to justify his murder to Sonia? Why or why not? Number 3, Raskolnikov asks Sonia if it would be better for people like Luzhin to die, to which Sonia responds, why do you ask what can't be answered? What's the use of such foolish questions? How could it depend upon my decision? Who has made me a judge to decide who ought to live and who ought not to live? How do Raskolnikov's and Sonia's perspectives on this issue differ? Why is that significant? And this really comes to the heart of Raskolnikov and his justification of murder and this whole book, right? It's all talking about the ends justifying the means, which I'll get back to in a second. Number 4, after Raskolnikov tells Sonia, she says, what have you done? What have you done to yourself? And then she hugs him. What does she mean by this? If you were Sonia, how would you have responded? Why would you respond that way? I think that this is one of the most beautiful scenes, but I think it's very beautiful because it's not very typical. My personal response to someone telling me that they're a murderer, maybe not to hug them right away, but Sonia is an amazing person. And she recognizes something in Raskolnikov that most people wouldn't recognize. And that's like his life and his humanity. And she pities him because he is suffering, because he has killed himself, as he says. Number 5, Raskolnikov says, Sonia, I have a bad heart. Take note of that. It may explain a great deal. I have come because I am bad. There are people who wouldn't come, but I am a coward, an evil wretch. But never mind. What does this statement reveal about Raskolnikov as a character? How has the murder changed him? Do you think that he is remorseful? Why or why not? So this is a really interesting scene when you're thinking about Raskolnikov's character. The overwhelming majority of you said that he was an anti-hero, right? He may have had some sort of good intention, right? He wanted to do good things for all of humanity in kind of a vague way, but he still murdered a woman, and that's not justified. But do you have sympathy for him? I guess is my question. After reading this chapter, do you feel bad for him? Do you want him to repent? Do you think he can repent? And another question to be thinking about is, do you think that he has lost his mind at this point, right? He's been coming in and out of consciousness this whole book. A lot of people get irritated with how much he's raving mad, and then he passes out. And then he wakes up again and he passes out again. But do you think he has actually lost his mind? And why do you think that might be the case? And also consider his conscience. So moving on to kind of not so much just the text itself, but what the text has to teach us. This chapter, and really the whole book, brings up the idea of the ends justifying the means and whether or not that's true, which I'm sure you've all talked about in theology before. People of all times, and I think especially in our modern day society, have been tempted to fall into this mentality that we can justify evil actions if they have good results or good outcomes. But we can see the point that Dostoevsky is trying to make in Crime and Punishment, where this kind of thinking leads, right? That you can justify the murder of someone because it is, because it might have good implications for all of humanity, maybe. But this is one of the things that I was thinking about with the church, right? This is why the church is so clear that the ends can never justify the means. It is never permissible to do an evil action, no matter what the outcome is, because there are psychological effects, right, and consequences to that, and we see that in Crime and Punishment. So that's it, guys. I hope you enjoy the reading this week, and please email me if you have any questions.